Hi, my name's Rob MacKillop. About 13 years ago, I did a series of videos on Mickey Baker's Jazz Guitar Volume 1, Book 1. So I thought it was about time I did Book 2, and this one, Jazz Guitar, a red and yellow and white cover. Not many people get to do Book 2. It's very different from Book 1 and quite difficult at times, so it's not as popular. But I think if you've been through Book 1, then you should look at Book 2. It's great for chord melody style of playing. And like Book 1, the first lesson starts off with a bunch of chords, 18 of them here. Now, I'm going to try and do lessons 1 to 10 in one video. It'll take about half an hour or so. I'll put a big number on the screen so that you can scroll through looking for the lesson that you're working on, if it would be of help. Now, I know my videos on the first book helped a lot of people. It's great, that's why I did them. And so hopefully this series of videos, because I will do the whole book, will help people as well. So it's very 1950s style jazz, moving into the 60s. But I've got a Peerless Cremona unplugged archstop guitar here, so it's just acoustic sounding. I have a quiet voice, and amplified guitar will cause an imbalance. So here we go. So lesson number 1, chord forms. Now he calls them forms, and it doesn't give them their proper names. For instance, the first one is a C minor with a D in the lower part. Where am I? Now, he wants you to think of these as form shapes, so just something C minor-ish, because he's going to be expanding on these added notes to the basic chord as we go through different lessons. So that's why he hasn't called it C minor add 2 or add 9. It's just C minor form. One word of warning: a lot of these chords have big extensions, right down in first position. And I've got a big hand, although it's a long scale I have on the guitar. It will cause problems for some people. So in lessons 2 and 3, instead of starting down here, I'll be doing it up here, and you can go down a fret at a time. We'll get to that. I want you to be sensible if something is too difficult. And Mickey himself says it in the footnote to lesson 1. If these forms are too hard to finger in this position, move them up to a higher fret. So, so we'll be doing that later. For just now, lesson 1, I'm going to be playing them as they are on the page. So, C minor, G minor, G major, add the major third, C major, and then 5, 6 and 7 form a beautiful 2-5-1 cadence in the key of E flat. Here's F minor 9, B flat 13, flat 9, E flat major 7. So that's the next one, number 8. He gives a whole lesson to that later on. F major 6. Now what's 6 notes above F? F, G, A, B flat, C, D. And so that's that D on the second string that you're hearing there. If we take the pinky off, we get the 9th G, F, 6/9. But he says, you know, put a B flat in the bass, you get B flat 6/9. It's interesting. Nice chords. Then G major 7, 9. I would just call that G major 9. The next one, C major 9. I wouldn't call that C major 9, I'd probably call it C add 2, but you know, Mickey always has his own way of doing things. 13 is G13, flat 9. And notice your bass note is not G, it's G sharp, A flat really, because that's the 9th note, A flattened. Sometimes it's on the top string, it's on the bottom here. And then I'm going to do 14 and 16, you'll see why. G minor 6, and then G major 6. Now 15 and 17, C minor 6. I mean, 6 above C is A, so there's a C minor chord. We're going to add an A on the 4th string. And then make the major third there, so C major 6. And then one seemingly random one, but he does use it at the end of the book, E minor 6/9 form. Nice chord. Okay, we're on to lesson 2 now, and immediately we have a problem for if you have small hands on a big guitar. You got frets 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 on the 3rd string, and that's a big stretch, even for my big hands. And he suggests you go up 1 fret at a time, up to fret 10. Well, I suggest you start at fret 10 and go down 1 fret at a time until it doesn't become comfortable anymore. And even if that's, you know, fret 6 or 7, then that's where it is, and you just go there. Now, after a month of doing this, you might venture to a lower fret, another month to a lower fret, and before you know it, 6 months from now, you'll be playing all these exercises all over the fretboard. It's worth the time, really, taking the time over this and not injuring your hand, because you can do it. So I'm going to take the one that he calls G minor form, right at the 10th fret. It's G minor with the 2nd finger, the pinky 2 frets above on the 3rd string. And that's that, and then he goes down, or we do. Okay, all the way down as far as you want to go. Feel comfortable with. The next one is D minor, that's the 10th fret, 10, 10, 10, 12, and we add the pinky on 14, like that, then you go down a fret at a time. The one after that is D major, down the fretboard, and finally G major, which is 10, 12, 12. Okay. Right, that's lesson 2. Now lesson 3, and this is where it really starts moving. It brings in 4 notes to the chord form. And we'll start up again at fret 10. This time I suggest you do a 3-string bar. The finger numbers are, well, finger 4, 3, 1, and then 4 on the 4th string. You can play around with that. If you're going to do a chord for each note, which you might want to do in an arrangement, you take 3rd finger off, then put it back as you play the pinky on the 4th. You can take that down a fret at a time. Next one's D minor. There's a mistake in the notation. It's got C sharp. It should be C natural. the fingering is correct. So, no, I followed the finger, the wrong note there. Again, when you play the lower note, you can add a finger back on. He's got a 4-3-1. I prefer 4-2-1, but it's up to you. Doesn't matter which finger you use. And then D major. Now watch my third finger here. So it just slides around from the 12th fret to the 11th, back to the 12th. And finally, G major form, and this time the second finger does a little side step. Okay, these are just ways of decorating these basic chords. Lesson 4, very simple. He just points out the intervals of each chord. Very important, though, that you understand that. And I'll put a little advertisement in here. I do teach via Zoom. I have students all over the world. This is great, and a lot of them are doing Mickey Baker Volume 1 with me. If you want lessons on Mickey Baker Volume 2 or anything else that I do, just get in touch. So lesson 4, just read it, and if you have any questions, just ask me. Lesson 5 is where we use what we've been learning in a real-world context. So a classic 2-5-1 sequence. Now chord 2 in the key of C is D minor, chord 5 is G7, and chord 1 is C. Now, the modern chords version, he calls it, you could do something like this. It's a bit different from so the next one, A minor, A minor 9, A minor 6, and then the G chord, bit of a stretch here. Okay. That's it. You can practice these at different frets. So you can do them chromatically up and down the fretboard. Like the first one, you could do in G minor like this. Okay. Lesson 6 deals with that 2-5-1 we talked about in lesson 1. And you can play it chromatically up and down the fretboard. He gives you 4 lines of standard chords underneath, which he said you can throw away because we're going to use this new style of playing. So it was revolutionary times this book was going through, or reflecting. Lesson 7, a couple of Frank Sinatra songs here. Love a bit of Frank. Now, the melody, so we got movement and then a still note, then more movement, still note. When we have the still notes, the guitar does more. So this is not accompaniment, this is kind of chord melody, but sometimes a single note is enough, as in the beginning here. So okay, so it's very simple chord melody style playing. The next one, I Dream of You, the melody, Okay. Now, the song is very slow, slower than I played it there, so it gives us a little time. Now, I start with my third finger on the G on the second string, which gives me time for my other fingers to get into position for that chord. So, okay, so fingering third finger, and then 1, 2, and 4, 2 and 3. Now he says 1 and 4 for the next. I use 1 and 3. My reasoning is I want my pinky to get ready to go on that note there, the B. Okay, and the same. I use my third finger on A, which slides down to the E on the second string, which allows me to bring in the other fingers. Now again I use 1 and 3 for the same reason. My pinky wants to go there. Yeah. Okay. Lesson 8, all he's teaching you here is that there are two very important chord sequences, or cadences. The 2-5-1 and the 4-5-1. In the key of C, chord 4 is F. Chord 5 is G7, and chord 1 is C. So that's a 4-5-1. Oops. 2-5-1, chord 2 in the key of C is D minor 7th, chord 5, chord 1. So these are, by far, especially the 2-5-1, is by far the most common chord sequence. Entire books have been written about 2-5-1s. Lesson 9, related chords. A chord like this at the 5th fret, 4 strings, could be seen as A minor 7th or C6. Now, that means every time we've got a C major type chord, C major 9, C major 7, we could substitute an A minor type chord, A minor 7, A minor 6, whatever, and vice versa. So also the G9 chord has a D minor shape in it. So here's a G9, G, D, F, A, G9, and the top 3 notes form a D minor chord. And we'll find out that chord 2 and chord 5, D minor and G7, G9, whatever, are very closely related, so much so that if the chord on the page says G7, sometimes people play D minor then G7. If it says D minor and G7, sometimes people just play the G7 form. You can, these are fairly interchangeable things here. The main thing is that they head to a tonic at some point. So on page 11 he gives you example 22 and subsequent lines. Examples of how to play a basic C, G7, G7, C. He doesn't give you guitar-friendly voicings on these chords, so don't try and play them on the guitar. Excuse me. You could try. But just go for regular voicing. So 22A is C major, then A minor 7th. And these 3 notes of the C major chord are in the A minor 7th. So, that's why we can interchange them. D minor 7 to G7, D minor 7, G7 again, and C. So that's a very basic way of interpreting the first line. The next line, the second chord, is notated wrong. It should be C major 6. So we start with C major 7. We can do it here. and C major 6. I might do D minor 7 like this. That's D, F, C, D. And then D minor 6, that C becomes a B. So I've got D, F, B, D. Now that looks like G 7th. So remember, D minor, especially D minor 6, and G7 are almost the same thing. So then he goes G, D minor 7, G7, C major 7. 22C, there's a mistake again in the notation. The second chord should be C major 6. So we got C major 7, C major 6, E minor 7. Now what's E minor 7 doing there? Well, it's a substitute for C major, just like A minor was. It's also, the relative minor of G major. So it's an important chord. If I play it with fingerings instead of the standard fingering, using fingers 2 and 3, if I swap them around for 3 and 4, I can play a C in the bass. There you go. So that's C major 9. But it's basically E minor 7 over a C bass. So he's got E minor 7. Now he's heading to D minor 7, so the next chord is just E flat, sliding down into it. Now this is what he calls forcing a chord into a passage. This E minor 7 has no business in key of C major. It's completely made up of flats, and of course C major's white notes. It works because there's a general flow towards the 2-5-1. Yeah, and on the next line, it's a similar thing, but we've got a scale of chords at the beginning. Now, there's a mistake in the notation. That final E flat major 7 there should be E flat minor 7th. The spelling of the chord, as you can see, is exactly as it is in the bar above it in the previous example. However, if you play E flat major 7, it's quite interesting. You might think, oh, what's that? But in the general flow of it, it works. It's another case of this forcing a chord. It's really E flat major 7. It does sound odd in there, but it's not so bad. So you can get away with pushing chords in odd places. Lesson 10. I forgot I was going to do lesson 10 before we stop, because lesson 11 onwards is real chord melody stuff on songs. So we're going to look at altered chords before we get there, based on the G chord, G7, and looking at specifically the 5th and the 9th, making them sharp or flat. So a basic G is G, B, D, root 3, 5, and the root I'm going to go down 2 frets to the flat 7th, and there we have a G7 chord. We could put a bass, G7. So we got 7, 3, 5 intervals. Now we're going to sharpen the 5 into C. Yeah, that D sharp is desperate to get up to the E of the C major 7 chord. So there's a lot of tension getting released into the tonic chord. Dominant chord, tonic. We could put a G on top. Okay, that D we're now going to flatten, so this is a G7 flat 5. I've got my little finger, pinky, on the B, so that's F, B, D flat, and the pinky stays put, but fingers 1 and 2 just go back a fret, and we get C major 7th, G7 flat 5, C major 7th, and we'll put the basses in, the G and the C. This is one of my favourite chord sequences, so okay, so that's a 5/1 cadence. Now the 9, I mentioned the 9, we get our G7 and have an A on top, that's G9. If we flatten the 9, we get G7 flat 9. Now this is one of the most important chords in jazz, and jazz guitarists love it because although it's G7 flat 9, it looks, smells and tastes like and sounds like a diminished 7th chord. So diminished 7th chords repeat every 3 frets. It's the same notes but in a different order. Yeah, and you hear that a lot in well, you get in horror movies. Yeah, don't open the door. So it's a very, very common chord, but it really is functioning. Functioning is G7 going to C. Yeah. So that's the flat 9, it's diminished 7th chord, and Mickey uses it a lot. Now the thing about a diminished 7th chord is that any note could be the root. So this could be F diminished 7th, B diminished 7th, D diminished 7th, or A flat diminished 7th. So you might see Mickey writing B diminished 7th, but he's really thinking of this G7 flat 9 chord. Okay. We'll get to that in the chord melody stuff. Now we can do sharp 9 as well. We had our 9, there's the sharp 9. I might do a bar at the 3rd fret. You know, sometimes we add another 7th here, or put the root there. You know, the different ways of fingering that. It's got a bluesy flavour. You know. So that's the sharp 9. You may be more familiar with this 9th chord. That's G9. You get G sharp 9, and if you bar your first finger, the 2nd string, you get the flat 9, and they go to C major 7th or 6. You can, if you get 1, you can often do the other as well. Or all 3. So there we go. Look forward to the next videos from lesson 11 onwards.